Chapter 3. Red in the Field. Morning sunlight filtered through the windows of Class 3B, warming the rows of desks and cutting golden slashes across the floor. Outside, cicadas buzzed lazily in the trees, and a soft breeze rustled the curtains. The kind of peaceful morning that slipped by unnoticed in the routine of everyday life. Kai Tsubasa stepped into the classroom. His uniform slightly rumpled, bag slung over one shoulder. His dark eyes scanned the room until they landed on two familiar faces. Jiro Yamada sat with his feet propped up on his desk, flipping a pencil between his fingers like a drumstick. Across from him, Emma Mori leaned over her notebook, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her face as she scribbled something furiously. "Took you long enough?" Jiro said without looking up. Kai dropped his bag onto the desk behind them. "Bell hasn't even rung yet." "Yeah, but punctuality builds character," Emma said flatly, still writing. Kai raised an eyebrow. "Says the girl who skipped PE class all last week." Emma glanced up, feigning offense. "For your information, I was recovering from emotional trauma." "She stubbed her toe," Jiro added helpfully. Emma kicked his chair. "It was a serious injury." The three of them fell into easy laughter, a sound that blended into the hum of morning life. Idle chatter, the squeak of sneakers on tile, the low murmur of other students pretending not to eavesdrop. It was ordinary, comforting even. But behind the casual banter and familiar warmth, something stirred, a silence buried too deep to notice. The hours drifted by in a blur of lectures, half-taken notes, and the occasional doodle in the margins of assignments. History dragged, math tested patience. Lunch came and went, a noisy escape under the shade of the trees out back, where Jiro nearly choked on his food after one of Emma's sarcastic jabs about his haircut. Kay kept pace with it all, his mind partially present, but always somewhere else, just under the surface. He smiled, laughed, nodded when he needed to. But sometimes when no one was watching, his gaze lingered outside the window for a bit too long. By the time afternoon rolled around, the heat had settled thick over the campus, drawing groans from the students as they filed into the changing rooms for PE class. "Why is it always hottest during gym?" Jiro muttered, tugging at the collar of his shirt. "Because the universe is a sadist," Emma replied flatly, tying up her hair. Her gym uniform clung slightly from the humidity, and she didn't look thrilled about it. Kai said nothing, adjusting his armband as they stepped out onto the field. The sun blazed overhead, and the sound of sneakers on packed dirt echoed across the grounds. PE today would be one of those endurance tests, laps, sprints, team drills. The usual. But for Kai, this was always the part of the day where his body did what his mind couldn't. Forget everything else. After being one of the first to finish their laps around the track, Kai and Emma went to sit on the bleachers for a breather and to talk. The sun hung high above them, casting long shadows on the field as the rest of the class continued running below. Emma leaned back on her hands, catching her breath, her hair clinging slightly to her cheeks. "You really don't get tired, do you?" she asked, eyeing Kai with a smirk. Kai shrugged, stretching his legs. "You kept up fine." "I was pacing myself," she replied quickly. "You just have something to prove." He laughed. "To who?" Emma paused, glancing at him. "Maybe to yourself." Kai blinked, the smile fading slightly. "You sound like my grandfather." "Well, maybe he's smart." There was a beat of silence as they both watched a few students rounding the track, breathless and grumbling. A breeze picked up, softening the heat for just a moment. "You always push yourself like that," Emma said, her tone gentler now. "You act like there's a finish line only you can see." Kai looked down at his hands. "Maybe there is." She nudged his shoulder with hers. "You know, you don't always have to carry the world on your back." He gave her a sideways glance. "And if I put it down, who's gonna pick it up?" Emma smiled, soft but tinged with sadness. "Maybe someone already is." Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them shifted, warmer, heavier, yet comforting. Kai looked away first, clearing his throat. "You're sweaty," he teased. Emma scoffed. "And you're insufferable." They laughed, the moment sliding back into something familiar. Kai's smile faded. "We're stuck in this corner of the world, living peacefully while so many are on the front. lines fighting back the demons. The threat is always close by, right around the corner. I have to be ready on the off chance that... Emma suddenly poked his cheek with her finger, gently but firmly. Boop? Nope. Too serious, she said with a little smirk. Kai blinked, startled. Did you just boop me? You were spiraling again, she said, resting her chin on her knees. And you get that stormy look in your eyes when you do. I don't like it. Kai glanced away, lips tightening. I'm just trying to be ready. If something happens, I need to be strong enough to stop it this time. Emma reached out and placed her hand on his arm. Kai, you don't have to carry that weight alone. I know, he finally said, voice low, and that's why I'm scared. If anything ever happened to you, then I'll fight too, she cut in, more firmly this time. I'm not some porcelain doll, Kai. We've been training together for years. If something comes, I'm not running. He gave a faint chuckle, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. Still stubborn, mumbling under his breath. He looked at her again, and she smiled softly. I've always been here, haven't I? She said. Training with you, arguing with you, dragging you out for late-night snacks when you're too stressed to sleep. He let out a faint laugh. That was one time. Twice, she corrected playfully. Then added, more quietly, You're not alone in this. Kai held her gaze. There was something warm and unspoken that settled between them, lingering in the space of silence. Then the coach's whistle blew sharply across the field. Emma groaned and stood, brushing dust from her legs. Saved by the whistle. Come on, Kai. If I have to run another lap, so do you. He rose to his feet beside her, shaking his head with a faint smile. You really are stubborn. She flashed him a grin. You love it. The whistle faded into the hum of the breeze, the field settling into routine once more. Students groaned and jogged lazily around the track. PE class returning to its usual pace. Kai's gaze drifted toward the tree line beyond the school's perimeter. The wind shifted. Something was off. His brow furrowed. A low, unnatural growl echoed from the distant woods. Faint, but enough to send a chill crawling down his spine. The birds had gone silent. The rustling leaves no longer sounded like leaves at all, more like footsteps. Many of them. Emma noticed his posture shift. Kai? He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. His senses screamed. A demonic flow of Niran different from the regular murk-toads and sky-gazers. That wasn't wind. That wasn't normal. Then came the howl. Deep, guttural, and close. Too close. From the shadows of the trees, glowing red eyes pierced through the greenery. Everyone run! Kai barked, his voice slicing through the chatter of the field. Students froze in confusion until the first demon wolf burst from the tree line, its hulking body the size of a full-grown tiger. Its fur was a deep matted black, but streaked with faint crimson lines that pulsed like veins beneath the skin, glowing dimly with each heartbeat. When it bared its teeth, Kai caught sight of fangs, longer and sharper than any natural predator's, curved slightly inward, built not just to kill, but to hold on until nothing could escape. A low, rumbling growl rolled from its throat, and with each exhale, a thin trail of black vapor curled from its jaws, fading into the air like smoke from dying embers. They were still wolves in every sense, powerful muscles, fluid movements. But there was no mistaking the wrongness that clung to them. Panic erupted. Screams filled the air as students scattered across the field like startled birds. Emma grabbed his arm. Kai! Jiro! Kai yelled, spinning around. Grab my training sword now. Jiro, wide-eyed but focused, bolted toward their bag by the gym's equipment racks. Kai clenched his fists, his eyes never leaving the approaching pack of demon wolves. Their maws dripped with saliva, and their claws tore into the earth as they lunged forward in unison. Jiro came sprinting back from the equipment racks, 3 wooden katana-shaped training swords in his arms. The other 2 looked ordinary at first glance, smooth, polished wood, but strips of paper talismans were fixed along their blades, marked with dark ink symbols. He tossed one to Emma, who caught it easily, her grip tightening as she turned toward the tree line. The third, he handed to Kai. Its hilt was wrapped in paper, talismans from the grip up to the base of the blade, sealing away something beneath. Kai took it without hesitation, the familiar weight steadying him like an old friend. You finally gonna break the seal? Jiro asked with a quick grin, trying to mask the tension creeping into his voice. Kai's eyes flicked between them, his voice low but firm. Just keep your heads. This isn't training, and those things won't hold back. Emma's faint smirk didn't reach her eyes. Neither will we. Before another word could be said, the first wolf lunged. The impact of its claws hitting the dirt was like a drumbeat, close enough to spray grit at their feet. The others fanned out in a shallow arc, glowing red eyes locked on their prey. Kai shifted his stance, knuckles tightening around the hilt. There was no more time to talk. Kai moved first. The moment the wolf's muscles bunched for a second leap, he surged forward, closing the distance in a blur. His wooden blade slammed into its ribs with a sharp, sickening crack, the talismans flaring faintly at the moment of impact. The beast yelped, a deep, guttural sound before collapsing sideways, its flank caved in. Kai didn't stop to watch it fall. He spun, already searching for the next threat. To his left, Jiro and Emma had paired up, facing down another wolf that circled with low, deliberate growls. Emma darted in first, her blade cutting across its shoulder. The talismans hissed faintly against demonic flesh, parting the tough hide but not deep enough to finish it. The wolf lunged for her throat, but Jiro intercepted, his own strike slamming across its jaw, staggering it back just long enough for Emma to slash again at its exposed side. Together, their rhythm became a deadly pattern, one drawing its attention, the other punishing the opening. Still, even wounded, the wolves fought like cornered predators. Blood, thick and black, spattered the dirt, the heat of battle mixing with the stench of smoke-like vapor curling from their maws. From the field's edge, more wolves broke into a loose half-circle. 3, then 4, padding low over the dirt, breath smoking in thin black trails. Then the air shifted, heavier. It stepped into view with unhurried confidence, a wolf larger than the rest. The alpha, shoulder-high to Kai, its coat a deep iron red from muzzle to tail. In the sunlight, it almost seemed to glow from within, the faint crimson vein lines beneath its fur pulsing in time with each breath. Its eyes locked onto Kai, and the pack's formation tightened instinctively. The alpha's lips peeled back, revealing its inward-curved fangs made for holding and crushing. It didn't growl. It didn't need to. In a single bound, it closed the distance, and the rest of the pack lunged with it. The moment the alpha's paws hit the dirt, Kai lunged in a blur, wooden blade arcing upward. The strike connected with the alpha's flank. The wolf snarled, stumbling back a step, but not much damage was done. Another wolf tried to flank him, but Jiro was there, intercepting with a sharp sidestep and a slash across its ribs. The beast yelped, but before it could recover, Emma darted in from the other side, her blade catching it just above the shoulder. Their strikes weren't deep enough to kill outright, but together, they forced the wolf back, driving it toward the tree line in a stagger. Kai barely registered them. His world had narrowed to the alpha. It circled him with measured steps, crimson eyes never leaving his own. Every muscle in his body was coiled, waiting for that one opening. A feint to the left, then it came in from the right, jaws snapping. Kai twisted, his blade coming down hard across its foreleg. The alpha roared, twisting to bite, forcing him to leap back before those inward-curved fangs could find him. Jiro and Emma's voices were somewhere behind him, the clash of wood and claws filling the air. The field had become a whirlwind of dust, snarls, and the thud of rapid footwork. A sudden flash of movement. Kai barely caught the blur of black and red. Before a demon wolf was already on top of Emma, its jaws snapping shut where her shoulder would have been. She was thrown backward, landing hard in the dirt. But before its teeth could find her, Jiro shoved her aside with all his strength. The wolf's fangs sank into his neck. Jiro's cry was raw, cut short as the beast shook him violently, blood spraying in the sunlight. Emma's scream tore through the chaos. "Jiro!" Kai's chest tightened, the sound ringing in his ears. He sprinted, the world narrowing to the wolf mauling his friend. His blade came down in a vicious, unhesitating arc, smashing into the creature's side with enough force to snap bones and tear flesh. The wolf yelped and released Jiro. But Kai didn't stop. His next strike crushed its skull, the body collapsing in a twitching heap. He dropped to his knees beside them. Emma was already cradling Jiro, her hands trembling, her gym uniform stained with red. "Kai, he's—" Her voice broke. Jiro's breathing was shallow, blood bubbling at his lips. His eyes were half-lidded, unfocused. Kai's throat clenched. "Stay with us, Jiro. You hear me? Stay!" But the warmth beneath his hands was fading. Something in Kai shifted, cold, heavy, and sharp all at once. His grip on the sword tightened until his knuckles ached. Slowly, his eyes went to the talisman wrapped around the hilt. No more. Kai stood, eyes locked on the pack. His voice was low, almost shaking, not with fear, but with fury. "You're all dead." Kai's hand shot to the hilt. With a sharp pull, he ripped the wooden sheath away, paper talismans tearing and scattering in the wind, their seals shredded in the same motion. The paper disintegrated into ash, and Niran surged up his arms, crackling through his body like wildfire. The hollow clatter of the false shell hit the dirt behind him, leaving the weapon in its true form. The air around him rippled with heat as the wolves hesitated, sensing the change. Steel flashed in the light, the edge darker than silver with a faint rippling grain. The blade wasn't ornate, but it carried an undeniable weight, the kind that made the air seem heavier around it. The first wolf lunged. Kai stepped into its path, the blade singing through the air in a clean, merciless arc. Its head left its shoulders in a spray of black ichor, the body collapsing before it even hit the ground. Two more charged together. One met his blade in a horizontal slash that took its head clean off, while the other lost a foreleg in passing, tumbling into the dirt with a pained, choking snarl. The remaining wolves slowed, circling warily now. They could feel it. The predator had shifted. From the shadow of the pack, the alpha emerged, larger than the rest, as its eyes locked on Kai with a hunger that was almost knowing. The alpha's muscles coiled, its breath coming in low, guttural growls. Kai crouched low, fingers tightening around the hilt. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then both exploded forward. The alpha launched itself into the air, claws outstretched, jaws wide enough to swallow his head whole. Kai didn't retreat. He dropped low into a sliding step, knees skimming the dirt as the world narrowed to the beast's shadow passing overhead. Steel flashed. The blade met the underside of the alpha's skull and carved down through fur, flesh and bone in one relentless stroke. Black ichor sprayed in a hot wave across his arms and face. Halfway through the body, the steel jolted, a snagging against something hard. The force wrenched through Kai's grip, and with a sharp crack, the blade snapped in two. The alpha's momentum carried it past him, its sundered body crashing into the dirt in two twitching halves. The pack froze, their growls faltering. Kai rose slowly, half a blade still in his hand, his chest heaving. His eyes locked on the pack, daring them to try. A sudden, deafening howl split the air, so loud it felt like it rattled in Kai's bones. It wasn't close. It wasn't far. It was everywhere. The sound rolled over the field in long, echoing waves, carrying a weight that made the air feel heavier with each pulse. Kai's breath caught as the pressure hit, thick, oppressive. It pressed in on his chest, coiling around his lungs like a vice. His skin prickled, every instinct screaming that whatever was out there was far, beyond anything they'd faced before. The wolves froze mid-step. Their ears twitched. Then, without a single snarl or snap, they turned in unison. In one fluid motion, they broke away, paws thudding against the earth as they bolted for the tree line. Kai stood motionless, blade half raised, watching them disappear into the forest's shadow. The silence left in their wake was sharper than the fight itself, just the sound of his heartbeat, pounding in his ears. Then he saw it. Between the shifting leaves, a shadow moved, large, too large. Two faint glints of crimson eyes shone from the dark, each higher than the tallest branch. The shape that emerged dwarfed the wolves that had just fled. Its head alone was massive enough to blot out the pale sunlight filtering through the canopy. A wolf, but not like any before. 4 meters at the shoulder, its outline rippled with muscle beneath a coat that seemed to drink in the light. Every breath it took was slow and deliberate, steam curling from its nostrils. It didn't move forward. It didn't need to. The weight of its presence alone was enough to lock Kai in place. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it turned. The massive form slipped back into the shadows, vanishing between the trees, without a sound, taking the rest of the pack's presence with it. The oppressive weight in the air faded with the retreating wolves, but it left behind something heavier in Kai's chest. He lowered the broken blade and turned toward the bleachers. Emma was still kneeling in the dirt, cradling Jiro in her lap. Her cheeks were streaked with dirt and tears, her hands stained in red. She looked up when Kai approached, her eyes wide and unfocused. "He's gone." Her voice cracked, the words barely more than a whisper. Kai dropped to his knees beside them, the half-blade clattering to the ground. For a moment, none of them spoke. The wind carried only the fading smell of smoke and blood. He reached out, placing a steady hand on Jiro's shoulder. "We'll take him home," Kai said quietly, his voice steady despite the knot in his throat. "He deserves to rest with his family." Emma's lips trembled, but she nodded, brushing a strand of hair from Jiro's face. The rest of the world blurred. The field, the broken dirt where they'd fought, the shattered sword. It all faded behind the weight of what they carried as they made their way back toward the school gates, Jiro's body wrapped in Kai's gym jacket. The Yamada home was quiet when they arrived. Kai knocked once. The door slid open, revealing Jiro's father. His eyes lit up for a split second, then dimmed when he saw what they carried. No words came. None were needed. Kai bowed his head and stepped forward, just enough to pass Jiro into his father's arms. Emma lingered behind, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, gaze fixed on the ground. They left in silence. The streets were empty, washed in the pale glow of the setting sun. Neither spoke as they walked. There were no words that could make the weight in their chests any lighter. At some point, Emma's hand brushed against Kai's. She didn't pull away. When they reached the turn where their paths split, she hesitated, fingers curling lightly around his sleeve. For a moment, she simply stood there, her head dipping toward his shoulder as if grounding herself. "See you tomorrow," she murmured, her voice almost lost to the quiet. Kai gave a faint nod. "Yeah." She let go and stepped back, the space between them feeling colder without her there. Kai watched until she disappeared down the street before turning toward home, but his gaze lingered, once more on the shadowed forest and the memory of the figure that had watched them.